listener production.
Hey, Chris Spear with you. Happy Monday and welcome to The Briefing. After an easing in 2025, we're being told that more pain is on the way for our hip pockets, and that's set to start tomorrow with the RBA's first decision on the official cash rate.
They've only got one instrument. The one instrument is interest rates. It causes pain to a third of the population, or it helps a third of the population if they're cutting rates, and everyone else is affected less directly.
A deep dive into what we can expect this year when it comes to interest rates and inflation is coming up after the headlines. Joining me today, as always, is Sacha Barbour Gatt. It's Monday, the 2nd of February.
Hey Chris, we start the week in Canberra where the politicians are preparing to return to Parliament, but all eyes today are on the coalition with a leadership spill and poor polling continuing to hurt the parties. David Littleproud will be challenged for the leadership of the Nationals at a party room meeting this afternoon after the party split from the Liberals on hate speech reforms 2 weeks ago. Now, he is expected to survive the tilt, which will be brought by backbencher Colin Boyce. And there is talk Littleproud will meet with Susan Lee sometime today as well to try to bring their parties together.
Yes, and that's amid talk that Lee herself could face a party room spill next week after Conservative corners of the Libs met last week to discuss it. We have since heard from backbencher Andrew Hastie, who has ruled out challenging for the leadership, but Angus Taylor has reportedly been canvassing support from MPs and is close to getting the 26 votes needed to win. And this, of course, Sash, comes as new polling is out today, and it shows support for Lee has dropped to just 9% compared to 37% for Anthony Albanese.
Yeah, the Redbridge poll also finding just 1 in 5 Aussies would vote for the coalition at an election right now. That's dropped from 26% in December down to 19%. And once again, we are seeing support for One Nation in the polls climb. It's at 26% of those surveyed saying they'd vote for the party. I read some really interesting analysis over the weekend saying we don't know actually if this polling is reflective of like protest votes, like I cannot support the coalition right now because of what's going on. I'm going to give my support to One Nation, and whether those people could be won back by the coalition if they started getting their act together, or whether it's genuine, a change in views, a change in political alignments. We don't know. We don't have the ability to get that analysis just yet. And, we probably wouldn't know for sure until an actual election was held as well. So it's really interesting to keep seeing this polling show positively for One Nation, whatever reason is behind it. Also worth noting just how crazy it is with what's going on with the coalition, that this will mark the first question time ever in which the Nationals will join the crossbench. And the size of the crossbench, so keep in mind that's independents and that's minor parties like the Greens, that will now equal the size of the 28 Liberal MPs on the opposition. So it's insane to see happening on the floor of Parliament right now. My guess, the coalition will be trying to get their act together this week. They don't want this to continue. So we'll have to wait and see.
Clive Palmer has been named in the latest release of the Epstein files in the US, which claims Donald Trump's former advisor directed his 2019 election ads campaign. The Australian mining billionaire was mentioned in a text exchange reportedly between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein, with the key architect in the MAGA movement saying he told Palmer to run the $60 million anti-China, anti-climate change blitz.
And just to rewind quickly, you might remember in the lead up to the 2019 election, Palmer's United Australia Party ran those obnoxious ads, and it came in the form of giant billboards. It was on TV, radio, in the newspapers, also a bunch of text messages, which copped a lot of criticism at the time. And those are the ads that Bannon is trying to take credit for. In a statement to the ABC, a spokesperson for Palmer has denied ever speaking with the former chief advisor to Trump.
Meantime, also in the latest release of the Epstein files was damning claims against the former Prince Andrew, including that he received trafficked women and even took them to Buckingham Palace. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has responded saying Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be prepared to give evidence about Epstein in the US.
To the Middle East now, where Israel has reopened the critical Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. For context, this is the main crossing in and out of Gaza that's been virtually closed for almost 2 years by Israel. Palestinian security officers and ambulances have now entered the enclave through the Egyptian gate, where Gazans are also expected to pass through from today, but in limited numbers.
According to reports, there are around 20,000 Palestinian children and adults needing medical care hoping to leave war-torn Gaza via the crossing, and thousands more outside the territory hoping to return home. Israel and Egypt will continue to vet all Palestinians at the crossing, however, will be supervised by EU Border Patrol agents.
The crossing was first closed in May 2024 by Israel, which described it as a lifeline for Hamas operations. And while it stopped border crossings, it also stopped the flow of aid. Now, this comes after Israel carried out some of its heaviest airstrikes on Gaza since the October ceasefire, killing more than 30 people, including 3 children, according to Palestinian health officials. The IDF says it was responding to a tunnel sighting and was targeting Hamas commanders and weapons. And Israel says that's in a direct breach of their ceasefire agreement. So, I mean, the term ceasefire, you really need to put quotation marks on it with this.
Changing pace now and back home, where Carlos Alcaraz has become the youngest man in the world to win all 4 tennis Grand Slams. And that, of course, is after he defeated Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open final last night.
Alcaraz conquers Australia. 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5.
It's the 22-year-old's first time taking out the AO, becoming the 5th man in the Open era to win all 4 majors, a feat also held by Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and the very man he defeated.
You're so young, you have a lot of time, like myself. So I'm sure we'll be seeing each other many more times in the next 10 years,
The match lasted 3 hours and 2 minutes, to be precise. Both thanked the fans and Rafa Nadal, who was in the crowd wearing a suit. Chris has made a note in the script saying wild.
Yeah, it is wild. It's so wild to see Rafa Nadal sitting in the crowd watching tennis in a suit and not in his tennis gear. Odd.
Okay,
Very
sure.
odd.
Novak also dropped a bombshell by hinting that the 2026 Oz Open could actually be his last.
I must be very honest and say that I didn't, think that I would be standing in a closing ceremony of a Grand Slam once again. So I think I owe you the gratitude as well for pushing me forward throughout the last couple of weeks.
Yes, a moment that made me quite teary last night. It was so beautiful because he said, usually when he's played in Australia, he hasn't had such a receptive crowd or so much, hasn't been surrounded by so much love. And he said this time around, it felt really different. It was really special to him, especially taking on someone like Carlos Alcaraz, a young gun. He's 22 years old. He's making waves in the world of tennis. And Novak Djokovic, not to say he hasn't achieved a lot, he has. He was chasing a record-breaking 25th Grand Slam title here, Sash. But I mean, it's just, watching one of the greats, on the way out, it's sad for tennis fans.
Sad. That does actually bring the AO to a close. I can hear some listeners going, finally, we don't have to hear about it anymore, including our dear head of podcast, Claire Weaver. Shout out, Claire. And to mention as well, of course, the women played their final and Aryna Sabalenka went down to Elena Rybakina. So she is the women's champ of 2026.
And the Grammys are happening today with Kendrick Lamar dominating the nominations with 9. Among them, Record and Song of the Year for Luther.
If it was up to me, I wouldn't give it nobody's no sympathy. I'll take away the pain, I'll give you everything.
He'll be up against Sabrina Carpenter in both categories for Man-Child. Along with Doechie's Anxiety, Billie Eilish's Wildflower, and Rosé, and Bruno Mars's Arbiter. A song that dominated lounge rooms around the country. Children love this song so much, Sash.
They do.
The difference, by the way, between Song of the Year and Record of the Year, if you were wondering, is the latter credits all involved with the actual recording of a song. So Record of the Year takes, into account everyone involved, including people like producers and engineers.
Yeah, shout out to the producers and engineers of the world. Hey, we've got some Aussies in the mix too. Amel and the Sniffers are up for Best Rock Performance with You Should Not Be Doing That.
You're in New York, getting shit on, and they were down in Nova saying you should not be doing that.
Rivers to Soul is up as well for Best Dance Electronic Album for Inhale Exhale. And Tame Impala is up for Best Dance Electronic Recording for End of Summer.
I waited till the end of summer and I ran out of time.
Oh,
Hello.
what a drop.
What a great way to start Monday. And if you are not at work and you've got time, you can catch it all from 11 a.m. on Stan, Australian Eastern Daylight Time, by the way.
If you are at work, flick it on in the background.
Yeah, well, you can chuck it on your phone and pop your headphones in while you're typing away.
Hijack the kitchen TV. There are so many options. The options are
Endless. And that is it for our headlines today. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Monday. We are getting into My Deep Dive next, and it's an explainer breaking it down for you. Interest rates. We're about to start hearing a lot about them. Stay tuned. You need to listen. After many years of cost of living pain, there was a real sense in 2025 that things were starting to get better. Inflation was starting to lower, a run of price increases on things like groceries and rents was beginning to stagnate, and the Reserve Bank was finally cutting interest rates. Indeed, 2026 started with some economists predicting we wouldn't see any change to the cash rate at all this year, up or down. Well, that all changed last week with one little announcement.
A shock today from the Bureau of Statistics, which has revealed the official inflation rate has jumped 0.4% to 3.8%.
Yes, that pesky little number with big implications has started another march north. So what's that done to impact tomorrow's official cash rate decision from the Reserve Bank, the first of the year? And why should someone without a mortgage care? Peter Martin is an economist and journalist, and he joins me now. Peter, thanks so much for joining us on the briefing today. Look, the first cash rate decision of the year is tomorrow. What are economists predicting will happen?
Economists are regarding it as basically a done deal that the Reserve Bank will lift interest rates at 2:30 p.m. It'll be an increase after three decreases last year. They always move by 0.25 percentage point. So it'll move up from 3.8% to 4.05. That's not what matters for people. What matters for people with mortgages or what happens to their mortgage rate. At the moment, a typical mortgage is around 5.5%. So it'll increase to 5.75 and then perhaps increase again and then again, maybe.
It's interesting because I heard some forecasts at the very beginning of the year. I mean, we're only just in February, but I'm talking early Jan, that were kind of predicting that we might not see any change to the official cash rate this year at all across the entire 12 months. What has changed to now see us looking at an almost guaranteed rate rise tomorrow?
Shocking inflation news. So inflation is meant to be between 2 to 3%. That's the target the Reserve Bank is given in a sort of a letter, an exchange of letters from the Treasurer. It has to meet that target, and it has now to meet the middle of it or explain why it hasn't. So the middle of that is 2.5%. Anything above 3% is seriously outside the range. We were 3.4, and now the latest inflation figures, which came out last week, 3.8. Now, that is seriously outside the band. And so if they didn't increase rates, they'd need to explain why. And it'd be hard to think of an explanation. That doesn't mean that we're causing the inflation. It might be caused by other things. But if it makes life difficult for us, if it makes us less likely to spend, that'll make it harder for businesses to put up prices.
So do we have an understanding of why we've had this shock inflation figure come through?
It's fairly widespread. We have far more prices increasing at more than 3% than we have increasing at less than 2%, far more categories. It's fairly broadly spread. It's probably not that we're spending a lot more than is expected. Spending has picked up a bit at the end of last year. It's that businesses are finding it hard to get things. They're finding it hard to get workers, so they're having to offer a bit more, or they're finding it hard to get materials for building. Economists refer to it as two blades of a scissors. Now, it doesn't really matter which blade or a combination of blades is doing things, whether it's businesses finding it hard to supply things at the old price or people being prepared to spend more than the old price. It doesn't matter which one it is, the scissors still cut. And the Reserve Bank can only really influence one of the scissors, and that's our spending, and that's what it's going to do.
Are there other factors that come into influencing the Reserve Bank Board's decision when it makes the judgment call on the official cash rate?
It's also required to take account of employment, to aim for full employment. Practically, it regards that as a secondary objective, basically because no one knows what full employment is. Now, you might think that full employment was an unemployment rate of 0. That'd be a reasonable assumption, but it's not. You can't have an unemployment rate of 0 because people are always changing jobs. You always have some people out of jobs. Not everyone has the mix of jobs that is needed. I can't play violin, for instance, right? But some people need violin players. So you'll always need an unemployment rate greater than 0. You'll always have one. The question is, what's the lowest you can get it without feeding inflation? And the answer to that is it doesn't really matter because if you're targeting inflation, then almost by definition, unemployment is too low. Unemployment is probably too low for the Reserve Bank. It's 4.1%. Probably the Reserve Bank would regard effective full employment as 4.5. We used to regard it as 5%. If you got down to 5%, that'd be good. We're now well below that. So it is required to take account of unemployment in theory. In practice, it only looks at inflation.
So, we've seen this surprise figure come out. It's then impacted how economists are predicting the cash rate rise will trend in 2026. Will the government look at this and go, okay, we need to address this rising inflation as a matter of urgency? Because we've seen in the last couple of years, you can't escape it, the cost of living crisis, people doing it really tough. Last year, it felt like we were starting to see a bit of a correction. We were seeing a correction. And now there's this concern that inflation's going back up, interest rates are going back up. So how urgently will the government look to act on this?
Well, part of what's happening is the result of the government acting on it. So the government did something really clever. It gave people these big rebates, and the state governments, particularly in Queensland, gave people big rebates on electricity, pushed down the price of electricity, and that mechanically lowered inflation. But the rebates are always due to end. They did end, and inflation spiked back up. Then the government reintroduced them, and some of the state ones are still gone, but now the last of the federal ones is ending, and that pushes prices back up to where they were. Now, if you get prices being pushed up, that pushes back measured inflation, pushes it very high. What people look at is the underlying rate of inflation. It's a measure that cuts off extreme things like this. The underlying rate of inflation is actually pretty frighteningly high. It's 3.3%. What's particularly disturbing is that if you look at what's been happening over time, say if you look at the last 6 months, you'll see that underlying inflation is rising. It's rising to about 3.8% from 3.3%. So it's moving in the wrong direction. There's not a lot the government can do. The government can give us more money. It did that with tax cuts. We went out and spent that, and that helps push up prices too. It might be that the government's measure to assist home buyers has hurt inflation a bit. It's now easier to get a home, buy a home if you've a 5% deposit. A lot of what's happened toward the end of the year in prices is in the building industry. And naturally, if you've got people thinking, hey, I can buy a house, you go and get a piece of land and build, builders will put up their prices.
So someone listening to this who doesn't have a mortgage might be thinking, well, why does any of this matter to me? Explain why we should care about the official cash rate and thus interest rates.
Sacha, your asking me to reveal the dirty secret of economic journalists. The dirty secret of economic journalists is we tend to explain the easy bit. The easy bit is mortgage rates. You can understand that. When interest rates increase, that makes it harder for the third of households who have mortgages, another third own outright, another third rent. That makes it harder for them to spend. It brings down prices. Easy to understand. That's only one of the channels by which interest rates affect inflation. The other one is harder to explain, so most of the time we don't do it. It's that if our interest rates are high, it'll make it likely that investors who invest all around the world will bring money here. When they do that, they need to buy Australian dollars, pushes up the value of the Australian dollar. Voila! The price of anything you buy online, price of overseas travel, the price of anything that's imported gets lower. That's another mechanism. So higher interest rates, they need to be higher than other countries, or they need to be moving up while other countries are moving down, which is what's happening. That's another means. Now, that's not particularly unpleasant because it just makes it easier to buy things. It's perhaps another way, another reason we don't talk about it. Now, if you are someone who is saving, if you're saving for a deposit, if you're just one of these people who, does what you're told and believes it's good for you or, sort of morally good to save, or if you're a retiree who's, saved a lot of money, higher interest rates can help, of course. So it's not painful for people without mortgages. It's painful for people with mortgages, but they've only got one instrument. The one instrument is interest rates. It causes pain to a third of the population, or it helps a third of the population if they're cutting rates, and everyone else is affected less directly.
All right. Well, it sounds like it's going to be an interesting year ahead when it comes to this stuff. Thank you so much, Peter Martin, for talking to us on The Briefing.
Great pleasure.
That was journalist and economist Peter Martin speaking with me there. And that is all for this episode of The Briefing. Thanks so much for listening. Hey, if you've got a second, we'd love for you to drop a little comment if you're listening in Spotify. Tell us what you thought of this episode. Otherwise, you can rate or review us wherever you are listening. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. Catch you next time.